In 2021, the world's largest companies made a promise: net zero emissions by 2050. It was signed, announced, celebrated. Governments endorsed it. Investors demanded it. Banks pledged to finance only companies aligned with it. And for a moment, it felt like the global economy had chosen a direction. That moment is over. This is AxisShift. And before this video ends, you'll understand why the biggest corporate promise of the 21st century is collapsing, and what one oil company's maths reveals about the entire system. Let's start with what net zero actually means. Not the politics, the mechanics. Net zero means balancing the greenhouse gases a company emits against the gases it removes from the atmosphere. Emit less, remove more. Net the difference to zero. Elegant in theory, almost impossible in practice. Because for most corporations, the majority of emissions come from things they do not directly control. Suppliers, shipping, customers using the product itself. Which means most companies promise to control emissions they cannot fully measure, and most have no idea what their supply chain actually emits. Which brings us to what is happening right now. In early 2025, all 6 of the largest US banks withdrew from the UN-backed Net Zero Banking Alliance. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley. Gone. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager with over $10 trillion under management, exited the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative. HSBC, Barclays, and Royal Bank of Canada followed. JBS, the world's largest meat processor, formally recast its 2040 net zero pledge as what executives now call never a promise. This is not hesitation. It is retreat, a structural reversal. The reason is not cynicism, it is mathematics. McKinsey estimates the global transition to net zero requires $275 trillion of investment by 2050. That is $9.2 trillion every single year. The world is currently investing only a fraction of that. The modern global economy was built on hydrocarbons. Net zero requires rebuilding that system while it is still running. Human civilization has never attempted an industrial transformation at this scale before, and the gap between what is pledged and what is being invested is not shrinking. It is widening. And the companies that signed the most ambitious pledges are discovering something uncomfortable. Shell plans to offset its entire oil and gas production through forests and carbon removal by 2050. The problem? Shell alone would need more carbon offsets than existed on the entire planet in 2019. The promise assumed resources that do not exist. But here is the deeper story. Net zero is not just an environmental commitment, it is a data problem, a supply chain problem, a financial reporting problem. Companies are now legally required in Europe and increasingly in the United States and Australia to disclose their emissions across all 3 scopes. That requires tracking data across thousands of suppliers, forcing thousands of suppliers to report emissions the same way, building auditability into financial disclosures. The companies that can solve this problem will have a structural compliance advantage over those that cannot. And the countries that build the infrastructure for this reporting will shape the rules of the global economy for decades. Because underneath the pledges and the retreats, the race to net zero has created something real, a minerals race. The batteries, solar panels, and grid systems of a low-carbon economy require lithium, copper, nickel, cobalt, and rare earths. China controls roughly 60% of global rare earth processing. Australia holds some of the world's largest reserves. The United States is spending hundreds of billions to rebuild domestic supply chains. Net zero, whether achieved or not, has already reshaped geopolitics. So what does this mean for investors? The companies retreating from net zero pledges are not escaping scrutiny. They are trading regulatory risk for reputational risk. Europe has already acted. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism now prices the carbon content of every imported good entering the EU. Companies that cannot account for their emissions face real financial penalties. Not in 2050, now. The net zero era did not end. It got harder. The future of net zero will not be decided by politics, but by supply chains, capital, and physics. The promise sounded simple. The reality was always more complicated. And in 2026, the gap between what was pledged and what is possible is the most important story in global business. Subscribe to AxisShift, because the world is turning and you should know which way.